Alright, here it is. Amazon's equivalent to the Battle of Winterhold, in all its awfulness. As everything flows best in sequence, I'll bounce between Austin Edhill and Khazad-dûm as this episode goes. We begin on a terrible green screen overlooking Eregion, with Celebrimbor sipping a cup of Morning Joe and scooping up Mardi Gras beads to work on the 9 rings. This master jewelsmith exhibits his illustrious skills by using the bare metal of $2 pliers from Walmart to bend the rings into position. Then, picking up Feanor's hammer, he realizes something's wrong with a missing gemstone. Then CGI Little scurries across the floor because no one could simply film a mouse. Then, after noticing filth in his reflection, Anatar walks in. These oddities are ignored when Celebrimbor mentions he's never felt such clarity since beginning these tasks. You know, because the building tension between these two that should have driven them apart doesn't matter. Celebrimbor mentions the rings require a few more days to complete, so Sauron shrugs his shoulders and steps outside into the ongoing siege. The Kendall lies to the others that Celebrimbor has lost his marbles and won't order a counterattack. None of you who have known Feanor's grandson for millennia want to go check? No? Great, and Anatar didn't order an investigation across the river to learn who was killing all the travelers anyway and kept everyone inside the capital. Anatar's orders are just as stupid as the false claims about Celebrimbor. Whatever, so the guards make ready for a counterattack, and Myrdania wants to know what the bad wig is withholding from them. He answers Grandpa Brimbor has gone senile. You just said that, man. Again, none of this makes any sense. Celebrimbor is supposed to be so widely regarded as one of the most stern and consistent elves in Middle-earth. So crashing out because he couldn't figure out how to make a few rings is ridiculous. But I forget, this isn't a passion project by dedicated fans, rather an abomination best suited to dwell in the depths of far below Moria. Anyway, Captain Plot Progression here says Myrdania will receive a reward later, then notices the siege weapons have stopped. Check this out. The orcs turn to aim at the mountain. Why? How? That's almost 3 times the distance. There's no way you'd snipe the... Never mind. The resulting landslide dams the river, cutting the flow and draining the waters in front of the walls. Alright, just a few questions. How did the trebuchet reach the mountain if you didn't adjust the weights in them? If your trebuchet are so powerful and precise, why not collapse the entire city of Austin Edhill without actually sieging it yet? Hell, why not aim at the walls if you are? Also, how does collapsing the mountainside halt the river? The water still flows from the north. Blocking the river doesn't freeze the water in place, you idiots. God, you boil toast, don't you? Anyway, so the Fresh Prince of Noldor arrives on the orc side of the river because apparently fast travel is still allowed in this series. Then back up in his tower, as Celebrimbor tolls away, he notices CG Little repeating the exact same movements from prior, so he decides to mark the candle to confirm his suspicions. Astonishing, someone finally passed an intelligence roll. Meanwhile, over in Khazad-dûm, Durin III receives a report about the terribly written battle and orders his men to delay no longer and retake the mine from his son and the elephant. How have they not been arrested yet? Or are all of the dwarves just that terrified of bats? Also, what is this pose? Guys, let's try to make her look sexy even though she hasn't starred in a film since Jurassic Park. Anyway, Narvi and the others arrive ready to fight, but then Navi tosses his weapon aside saying, "Hey, listen, we stand with you," much to the confusion of myself and the other dwarves. Why even make it appear as though you were willing to fight in the first place? Just clear the confusion right away, because your men were ready to carve up some brontosaurus ribs before you cucked them. Then Narvi mentions an elf is here looking for Durin the dipshitted. Hell, you coulda led with that. In his home, Elrond seeks aid from the dwarves to combat the orcs. How did Elrond get here? Did he go around? How long did it take him to do that? Wouldn't the elven army already be there? Speaking of who, since the river has magically frozen in time and space, this allows the orcs to charge across the riverbed. You know, the soaked sand, mud, and clay riverbed. The orcs should be stumbling and sinking in the waterlogged terrain like Scooby-Doo, but of course, logistics is a 2-letter word these writers cannot spell. The elven commander then says loose arrows because the writing staff's favorite movie is The Two Towers, as this entire sequence is a complete ripoff of the battle for Helm's Deep. Problem is, these stuntmen weren't paid shit, because some of them just fall over. The special effects team put this arrow in this guy too soon and he doesn't react properly. So while the special effects artists missed their cue, we're shown the orcs were rolling a battering ram down tracks. Where did this thing come from, and when did you guys make the tracks? Who's even laying them? Anyway, Blondie is still out on the outer wall because she's so vital to this battle and scouts ahead for the elves, informing them the orcs have a ravager. I beg your finest of pardons? How would you know what an orcish siege weapon is even called? Whatever, back in the tower, Anatar's like, hey, you got some rings for me? Then Celebrimbo points out the candles and embers haven't changed, and the mouse repeats the same movements because he's finally figured it out. He's been deceived this entire time by Anatar, the Lord of GIFs. So Celebrimbor steps outside and sees both the city and his forge in ruin. Okay, pull the e-brake again. How the hell is Celebrimbor alive? Sauron's only hiding reality. He didn't turn on no clipping mode for Celebrimbor. He's covered in soot and debris. It obviously affects him, and the rubble makes no sense. Man, I almost forgot how painful this series was. Sauron reveals his wound and identity, so Celebrimbor leaves his tower and dies. Wait, that's right, this is shit-tier modern-day writing, my bad. He's alive and goes to the wall, and why the fuck are you still here? Anyway, because these writers have no idea how to set anything up, they force Celebrimbor to rant and rave like a lunatic instead of explaining himself to Barbie so that she understands Anatar's deception. Of course, she looks at him like a high school crush out of his league. Sauron shows up, and Celebrimbor continues losing it by commanding the guards to cut him open. For the love of... You already know he can change people's perception of reality. Why'd you think this was a good idea? Whatever, Sauron's wound is now red, because of course it is, so this fucking idiot is bummed out that no one believes him. Then, when Myrdania tries to comfort him, he pulls his hand up and away without contact, but Sauron flicks his wrist so Myrdania goes sailing forward off the wall where she's killed by an orc. You know, forcing a character into the plot and telegraphing her death does not a connection I feel. If this wasn't dumb enough, then Sauron gloats to Celebrimbor and says, "All this can end. Finish the 9, and I will spare your city." Remember how the elves could have killed Gimli in the dark because of his loud breathing? Well, Rings of Piss elves must need hearing aids under those helmets because the guards didn't hear any of this. It's at this point a horn blares as the reinforcements from the Greyhavens have arrived. The orcs form a front-line defense without lance nor pike because they must have forgotten those at home. Elrond the Four-Headed leads the charge, and it actually looks kinda decent. Finally, we're about to see a real battle. One for the ages, as steel cuts flesh and bones bright. Nah, just kidding. Galadriel's brought up to the front lines and the entire elven army slams the brakes. Yep. This is the episode that blue balled the fandom. And check that out, how convenient the clouds are only over the orcs right now, allowing them to continue their assault in broad daylight when we all know orcs cannot survive in the sun. So, we hard cut to negotiations. Adar wants Sauron, knowing he's in the city. Elrond, of course, refuses because, obviously, Adar was laying siege to the capital of Eregion. This is where I will, again, bring up how completely nonsensical Adar is. If he truly wants to prove he only wants Sauron, he wouldn't have attacked. He would have walked to the front gate with a white flag and explained himself. Only when he was denied would he attack. That makes sense. Now he has the opportunity to parlay and end the bloodshed. He could stop the assault and allow the elves into the city, thus arresting Sauron. Now, morons would probably say, "Oh, that's completely unbelievable, Albeleo. You're so stupid." Is it though? Elrond, Galadriel, and Gil-galad are here. Adar could order the orcs to lay down their arms and offer himself up as a prisoner in exchange for the safe return of the orcs to Mordor while he faces punishment for the siege up to this point. All in the effort to prove Sauron's in Eregion and see him destroyed once and for all. It would have played into the humanization of evil, as this series has focused on, play to Adar's character, and give Sauron time to shine using his masterful persuasion skills to reignite the conflict by tempting the orcs. This would have at least been unique to the series, but that's not what happens. Instead, negotiations fall apart and Elrond kisses Galadriel. There's even uplifting music, like like this was a major moment. It's fucking gross. She's his great aunt, for God's sake. After giving her his lapel pin, Elrond leaves the tent with the other dude and openly discusses with him, convincing the dwarves they will join the fight. Dude, do you chew water? At least wait until you're safe at camp, you retard. After a brief scene of Durin pulling a Hercule, convincing all of the people of Khazad-dûm to support the elves, we cut immediately back to the battle reigniting. Orcs and elves throw down left and right, and yet again, somehow, the orcs outnumber the elves 10 to 1. Do the orcs have a hive cluster I'm unaware of? How has the number of orcs increased thrice at this point? These logistical errors drive me insane, especially when morons online try to argue this series is good. Then we're shown the horses sinking into the riverbed that, should have inhibited the orcs in the first place. Then Elrond's horse is killed, which might have been one of the several that died filming this abomination, so he kills the orc in return by sticking him to the catapult and launching him into the city walls. I don't even know why the orc wasted his time with the horse when there are elves to fight, but alright. A panning shot of the battle reveals the terrible choreography, like the director shouted over the megaphone, "Hey, don't worry, and don't care, just make it look like a fight, guys." That's probably why this elf doesn't stab this orc. This dude's just standing there doing nothing, and this idiot is trying to melee with a bow. Then the orcs are using a ballista to rip the stone out of the wall. I never thought I'd see something so terribly written, it'd reveal the writers have never removed a nail with a hammer. Using a ballista like this would remove the spike, not entire blocks. Anyway, the literal next shot, someone flipped off the light switch, and somehow, dead orcs litter the encampment. When did the elves get this far? Then the orc we're supposed to care about, because he has a family, questions Adar's leadership after so many losses, because apparently 5 of the trebuchets were destroyed off screen. When? Back in his tent, Galadriel has escaped and killed the orcs without sounding the alarm, and now she's wandering around the camp hiding her face, despite her exposed hair, smelling like an elf, still wearing her armor, and not just hopping the wall to escape. Good old Skyrim stealth right here. After avoiding direct contact with Adar for the 2nd or 3rd time this season, he mourns more of the dead so he can cry and make the orcs did nothing wrong crowd feel for them. Obviously, Galadriel in disguise walks away, but then the director orders a couple orcs to turn around and follow her, and again, these morons don't sound the alarm with Adar right there. Behind some tents, they're sniped by the Fresh Prince of Noldor who wants to kill Adar. But instead of sniping him, Galadriel convinces him to follow her into the city. Back in Khazad-dûm, Dimwit IV is about to leave for battle when Narvi arrives bloodied and beaten, saying, "Hey, listen, your father's lost his mind, and despite being so old the expiration date wore off, he cut down all of my men." This convinces dipshit of the year to recall the army from helping the elves. Are we fucking kidding? You're telling me obese Carrot Top, Queen Latifah, and a few men are not enough to stop his father? You know, Amazon, you could have made this more believable if the dwarves of Khazad-dûm were, I don't know, divided between supporting either of the two Durins, but just couldn't do it, could you? Then, back in his tower, Celebrimbor is chained to his table working, and then more of that retarded, "I'm not actually the bad guy, because evil can't just be evil" crap comes up when Sauron claims he was tortured by Morgoth for having a different vision for Middle-earth. God give me strength, because enduring this show might as well be penance for Lent. Sauron tries to convince Celebrimbor he's responsible for his own suffering, even though the writers are the ones who should be on trial for war crimes against Tolkien. Then Sauron leaves. In his absence, Celebrimbor has the bright idea to destroy the rings. Trying to pretend Celebrimbor has any intelligence this late in the game really doesn't help, but I suppose I appreciate the effort. Then we're interrupted by one of the dumbest things the elves could do. They are throwing sacks of, I don't know, gunpowder over the battlefield and igniting them with flame arrows. Collateral losses be damned, I guess, because some elves are almost struck by the flames. Anyway, the rings didn't melt because plot armor extends to trinkets, so he tries to break his bonds. Then, despite having, a cutter that should be able to sever the chains, he cuts off his own thumb. Why? This shit ain't mithril, just cut the chains. Anyway, leaving through the sewage pipe, hopefully on enchilada night, because fuck these people, he's knocked out, and then he's found by guards who have nothing better to do. Then Galadriel appears, and Cucabrimbor acts like he was enslaved, because consistency, thy definition be damned. He gives the girl boss the rings for her to take away, while he and the guards head up the tower to confront Sauron. Jumping to the battle, Elrond the Billboarded and a few elves approach the ballista with the plan to detonate the oil with a fire arrow. You heard me correctly. The plan is to explode the ballista using the barrel of oil strapped to it. Don't bring video game logic into this show, guys. That's an insult to video games. Despite being turned into a pincushion from out of nowhere, Crouching Tiger Hidden Elf uses one of her newly acquired arrows, somehow igniting the tip because apparently elf blood is flammable, and shoots it into the barrel, exploding the ballista. Never mind how many orcs that thing killed, how about the elves? So she dies, Adar orders for him to be released. Don Lemonless joins the fray, and one of the archers mentions the orcs are retreating. Bro, do you need my glasses? No one's going anywhere. Anyway, Adar's trump card is basically the Great Unclean One who approaches the battlefield. Then, jumping up to the tower, Celebrimbor and the guards confront Sauron, and with the flick of his wrist, Sauron manipulates the guards into killing themselves. Where was this when you were killed in the past, dude? You couldn't pay me enough in Bitcoin to believe that these writers even watch their own show. Back down on the battlefield, the hill troll has miraculously shrunk, kills numerous elves, and only after the elven Fade fires arrows at him does he decide to pick up some orcs to use as a meat shield. Why not some elves? And why aren't the archers shooting the troll in his legs or anywhere else except for the things that are blocking him? Oh, and as Adar watches them, Glug takes offense to the two dead orcs and walks away because that's too many for him, and then Elrond tries to sabotage the ballista that was detonated, which is still intact. Okay. In fact, I bet it's because the frame is actually metal. How can you prove that, Albeleo? One might ask. Simple. When Elrond tries to cut the rope, it sparks. Yep, look at that. The cleanup artist missed that brief shot. Anyway, he cuts the rope, the troll backhands him like Bing Crosby, and rams the ballista into the wall. Somehow, this thing has enough weight that it cracks the wall with the troll's thrusts. At this point, Gil-galad finally shows up with his double chin, and he and a few other elves ride in to attack the troll. But it is the Fresh Prince who jumps onto the giant that topples it over. Good lord, how heavy is the sin that he bears? Then, after a couple stabs, the troll dies laughing. Why are you laughing? You didn't accomplish anything. Now the dead of night magically changes to morning, and Adar orders every last orc to march upon the city. Between these last couple shots, all of the fighting Gil-galad and Elrond were surrounded by instantly ends. There's only a few dozen elves left, and the rip-offs don't end when Elrond says, "Look to the north for the coming dwarves." The dwarves don't show up, because apparently Durin's dad requires an entire army to deal with. Accepting their fate, the few remaining elves charge forward to continue the battle. The elves get slaughtered, and the Fresh Prince is straight up killed after Adar runs two swords through him, and you couldn't convince me otherwise. Anyway, the orcs must have ate their Wheaties because they pull down the last of the wall with their bare hands, and if I say how anymore, the Comanche are gonna think I'm saying hello. Then Adar confronts Elrond, and his face is completely replaced with CGI. I mentioned this on Technically Mexican stream a while back. I think the current Adar actor's face was digitally added over the old Adar actor before he left the project, because this is some shoddy work, even for Rings of Power. Anyway, Adar knocks down Elrond and takes Nenya from him, and this episode ends, but not before one last middle finger to the audience. The credits have this terrible orc metal song over it, and I will never forgive Bear McCreary for this one. So there you go, the real meat of this 3-episode battle that was largely in this one. It's an affront to military tactics, history, and the legacy of Tolkien. One more episode to go, and believe me, it actually gets worse. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.